Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Greater Freedom with me, your host, Nicola Charlotte. And today I'm joined by a very, very special guest, Ruby Lee, who is an energetics and business coach and also host of the incredible Rituals podcast. And I'm so excited to have you today, Ruby. I can't wait to dive into more of your story, which is very fitting at the moment based on what you're doing, but also to learn more about how you have created such an incredible lifestyle and thriving business and some of the steps, lessons, and learnings that you have gained along the way to enable you to have this thriving multi-7-figure business, I think it is. So I would love for you to introduce yourself to the listeners and tell me a little bit more about your business.
Oh, thank you so much, Nicola, for having me here. What an amazing podcast to be on too, the Greater Freedom podcast. What a great name to just leap off. And I'm so pumped we're here as well because there's just a lot that I really want to share, and I'm sure everything else will unfold. But you did so beautiful introducing me. Just as Nicola said, I'm an energetics business coach, and what that actually means, and I guess where it came from, was having been a business coach now for 4.5 years. So really, I'm still very new into the world of entrepreneurship. But what this means to me is in the first 1 or 2 years of having started my business, a lot of it was based on the strategy and the frameworks and the hustle and the pushing and the needing for something to be a level of success. Because like most of us here, we're driven. We want to get big things done in this world. But it wasn't until I realized that everything revolved around energy. Everything revolved around how you connected a belief system behind whatever desires you had in business, that things started to really exponentially change for me. I started to notice that there was more flow in my life, more income, more clients, more impact. And because of that, I decided that I would dedicate my life and my business to helping entrepreneurs find the same level of freedom and flow. So yeah, it's that's probably the best way that I can describe energetics in business.
Yeah, I love that you added that element to it, because actually it could be so easy to tell your title and move on. And there might be people that are less familiar with the energetic side of business that are thinking, oh, what does that actually mean? And I can totally relate to you in terms of the first 2 years, I guess, or even slightly less, but yeah, 2-ish years of my business was so process driven, looking at the strategy, learning, going to workshops, signing up to courses, doing. And actually it wasn't until I began to get more of an insight into, people buy from people, and we're attracted into people based on their energy, and we gravitate towards those that we resonate with and can relate to. And that does come down to energy. But I'm not surprised that there are so many people like you and I who have gone through that same process, because at school, at university, or sort of in higher education, and even in the corporate world, when do we ever talk about the importance of energy? So how do we know? Never. And there are so many things that I think should be taught at school, but of course it's going to take a while to figure that out. But it's amazing that you and I and platforms like this are able to help people dive into that a little bit more to make such a difference in their business. So one of the things that you said, which I'd love to delve into a little bit more, is how your business grew exponentially once you began to focus more on the energetic side of things. So casting your mind back a couple of years, can you think of a couple or anything specific that, whether it was a practice, a ritual, a way of doing business that linked to energy that you really saw create bigger results in all facets?
Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm going to try and keep this as succinct as possible because, I can just keep going. So I left my job in March 2018. And this was really after a huge battle of the side hustle. Do I go in, all in? Do I not? 5 years of it, just back and forth. Finally, I picked my date, 22nd of March, 2018. It's like seared in my memory. And straight off the bat, I was doing quite well. I had networked myself quite well. I told everybody that I was leaving, that I was starting my full-time business. And what I found straight up was I had a lot of people in my network who would say, I'd love to work with you. And that was fantastic. 3 months in, I was doing quite well. 5K months was kind of where I was at. My goal to get to 10K months consistently. And then I would have, certain other network people who would say, can you come in and facilitate a session? Can you teach on this? So they were sort of higher levels of income that I was receiving. So what happened was in the first 100 days of my business, I had actually made my first $100,000. That's how fast it happened. So it just started to roll and roll. And it was amazing because I had some bigger financial contracts and corporate contracts. But somewhere deep down, I remember just thinking, everyone that I'm booking at the moment, or rather that's booking me, they are people that I've worked with or that know me, and nobody had really booked me that was, I guess, kind of just a complete stranger on the internet. And that was something that was just kind of brewing at the back of my mind. So come the end of the 3 months, my pipeline completely ran dry. It was like so quickly, just bam. And I remember feeling so worried about it. And I knew at that point I had to begin really pulling up my socks around social media and having myself be seen outside of my immediate network. And that was probably the moment that kind of just began this whole major hustle season in my business. And really, I mean, like working 7 a.m. until 10 p.m. sometimes, just creating and making stuff and, all the things. And I just burnt myself out so badly. But about 6 months later, 2019, me and my husband decided that we wanted to travel the world and actually take this business and the laptop lifestyle into real life. We booked ourselves a ticket to go overseas. And at this point, we were steadying the ship financially. We had just hit consistent 10K months. And every now and again, there would be like big injections of cash from other corporates and things like that. But 10K months was kind of what our aim was. The month that we decided to leave Australia and travel overseas, it was a $2,000 month. And I remember thinking to myself, that's it. Like, I have completely jeopardized my financial situation, because what I realized, and this is where it comes back to energy, I had put so much pressure on that moment, that month, needing to be a high end month so that I felt safe to travel the world. And effectively the opposite happened. So $2,000 month was disaster in my mind at the time. It was like, oh my God, we're a sinking ship, and, all the things. Like, my emotional well-being was not coping. I didn't really know how to manage my energy. But I picked myself up. We looked at the bigger picture and looked at, what, when we travel, maybe it'll actually give us more inspiration. And the worst case scenario is we go on a holiday for 4 weeks and we come home, right? Like, when you just think about the worst case scenario. Yeah. So off we went, traveling the world, and something amazing happened. We actually found so much expansion traveling, and so much creativity, so much flow, so much greater freedom, right, in doing that it immediately emulated in the business. So from a 2K month the month before, we landed on $17,000 in that first month of travel. And amazing. I was blown away by that. And I thought, how did I do that? I had less time on the laptop. I didn't have as much reach outs that I would usually be doing. I definitely wasn't posting as consistently. How did that happen? Then the month following that was our first $50,000 month. So I went from lowest month ever to the highest month ever, but not just the highest month ever. It was like, could not conceive $50,000. And yet that's what happened, so a lot of it was energetically based, but also coming back. It wasn't really a ritual, but it was a practice of, and I know not everybody can just take up and travel, but find the thing that lights you up. It could be a weekend away and it kind of just sets you back on track to remember why you're doing what you do. Or it could be just going for a high tea somewhere. Whatever it is, that's your thing. connect with that more and your business will feel it. Your energy will feel it.
I love that. And it's so exciting because there's so much fulfillment in that. And I think so often we get fixated on the financial freedom that we desire versus looking at what is the lifestyle that's going to fulfill me and energize me, where the byproduct is going to be the success in my business. And something that I say quite a lot and speak about on my socials is leading with lifestyle first. Because if you're living a life that fulfills you, that energizes you, that excites you, the ripple effect of that is going to be so powerful and poignant in your work. And that's sort of what, you're explaining as well. It's like, I know that this is what I want to do. I know this is going to light up my soul. I know that this is a passion and a desire of mine. And look how that happened. Look how it happens with the business. Whereas if you said, oh my gosh, we can't go traveling, we've got to stay at home, keep working, then I can imagine that the result financially would have been totally different to that which you then saw.
Oh, totally different energetics. And that's one thing I also want to say about you. Why I love your content is because you are really living out your truth. You're not just saying, oh, I've got a podcast called Greater Freedom. You are actually living and embodying what freedom looks like. Last time we spoke, where were you? You were in Spain, Mallorca.
Yes.
It's just like, And, I know that you've got amazing trips planned for the year ahead, and you're really a living, breathing example of that. But one thing that I wanted to share, and I wonder if you felt this as well at some point, because travel is such a big part of energetics and business, like for you and for me, we're so similar in that way. I remember kind of plucking out this one belief that I had, and it was, if my ideal client is watching me prance and dance around the world, I wonder if that actually makes me less appealing because, I'm on holidays all the time and I'm living this lifestyle, where it's all about freedom and having time for me. And it was really interesting when that belief came up because it was almost like you're allowed to have that, but only up to a certain point because then your clients won't relate to you. But then once I saw that, because energy can always go up and down in business like that. But when you find the belief that's backing that dip in energy, which in this case, very specifically, it was about that, I was able to work through it. I do a lot of hypnosis, journaling, kinesiology, some of my favorite tools.
Yeah.
But once I plucked that out, I found that more and more clients related to that lifestyle and more people were saying, I love the fact that you're not in your business all day long. Teach me how you do that. I just thought I would add a little bit of that context to it too.
No, definitely. I think that's so, I'm glad that you mentioned that because what I'm sort of trying to think about as well is the people that are listening, as you say, who might be thinking, oh, well, it's all well and good to go off traveling. And, you might have a family, you might have responsibilities, you might have a mortgage to pay. Like it's not necessarily easy. I would argue that it's always possible. But as you say, it's stripping it back to what can you do in your reality? Like, is it going for a high tea? Is it booking a staycation? Is it having a Monday morning where you're in bed with a coffee doing extra journaling? It doesn't have to cost lots of money, but it's about listening to your energy and being guided by what do I feel like doing versus what do I think I should do in order to get the success that I desire.
Absolutely. And, one of my clients, this is when I was traveling a lot in 2019 to 2020 before everything happened and the world shut down. One of my clients was like, oh, I was so triggered by your content. And she's like, look at this single gal traveling around the world. And then she's like, oh, and then I realized you were married with 2 kids and traveling with them. She's like, I was even more triggered by that. It's so funny. And then she's like, eventually she said, okay, well, clearly I had to hold the mirror up because she had 2 small kids of herself. And she had to hold the mirror up and reflect on why she believed that wasn't possible for her and where that belief came from and where it stemmed from. So no matter whatever it is that you're going through in your life and you're sharing that unapologetically, it's so beautiful to think that in some way it contributes to someone's reflection back on themselves. And when you trigger people, it's never ever on you. You know, they've got to work through stuff. But, you know, it's so interesting to kind of hear that story reflected back.
I think that probably does happen more than people like to admit. It's like, oh, I'm muting her, I'm unfollowing her. And then you're like, secretly down the line, you're like, I really want to work with her one day.
Yes. Totally.
But so if we think about, so you headed off traveling, you hit your first 50K month. And I suppose, you know, for me, and I'm happy to sort of say this, like, to me, I'm like, gosh, that feels like expansive, super abundant, incredible, you know, a big milestone in the future for me. So for someone that's around the sort of 10K, 15K mark, and I know we've spoken about this privately because Ruby is currently my coach. So on Voxer, backwards and forwards, we have lots of juicy conversations all around energy and sort of elevating up to that next level of like, as someone who is already generating 30K, 40K, 50K months, what are they doing? How are they acting? How are they showing up day to day? Was that a thought process that you went through at the time, or do you feel that it really did come down so much to the environment that you were in and the trust that you had created, I guess, in the business that you were building?
Oh, this is such a great question. And there's so many complexities in that because everybody's money belief system and story is so different from one another. But to give some context, for me, it wasn't as though I was always attuned to financial abundance. In fact, it was quite the opposite. I grew up in a family that had a lot of financial hardship and a lot of financial trauma, not because they, you know, both my parents were hard workers and I would say earning like a middle class to quite a great salary. But the main issue was that my father was a gambler. You know, he gambled everything away. He gambled 2 of our houses away. And so growing up in this really tumultuous relationship with money, watching how that broke my parents down and all the things, I grew up just with this belief system that money was evil, that the more money anyone had, it just caused a lot of stress and just a sickness. You know, like my mum got really sick not long after that, which is like, you know, always a connection, right? Yeah. When you have something going on. And I just remember thinking, I never, ever want to have that much money. I just want enough to kind of get by and I'm okay with that. But, you know, the pathway of my life took a very different turn. And often it's the thing that you're most scared of that is the thing that you're supposed to share and be in. And, you know, I'm such a spiritual girl. And so I've done a lot of really cool, like, star chart readings, all the things. And every single reader up to that point was going, oh, you're actually meant for great wealth, but not just that, you're meant to share that with the world. And I'm like, no, you got the wrong girl. That's not me. I'm happy just earning what I'm earning. Yeah. I'm like, oh, what a load of crap. Like, that's definitely not me. But then, you know, fast forward to becoming an entrepreneur and then having like this level of income and money. With that comes a lot of responsibility around, and the way I see it is if I'm not sharing this level of my lessons around money and the journey I've been on and really getting up and close with my money story and the trauma that surrounded it, and I'm not sharing that with anybody, that's really irresponsible in terms of my purpose work. Because I fully believe that when you go through whatever hardship you've gone through and you share that with the world, you heal the world. Or even by saying that, you heal one person. And that's where that real generational change happens. So coming back to your question about exponential growth and all those sorts of things, I just kind of think to myself, I remember at that point, once we started traveling and I just had my lowest month ever, all the fears around lack and money stuff had surfaced all the way back up. But I knew what to do with it because I, you know, really sought guidance from some spiritual healers and teachers on what to do to move that around and to clear my aura around it. That the reason why I had the 50K month was this. We had landed in Los Angeles, and I know we're going to geek out on some astrocartography in a second, but Los Angeles was a place in terms of my own reading. And basically, if you don't know astrocartography, it's basically like your star chart overlaid with the world map. And it gives you ideas on where your key energies are in this world. It's really cool. And I just learned how to read astrocartography. So where LA was positioned for me was really a place of expansion, career expansion, money expansion, income expansion, all the things. And I really, really felt that, like, oh my God, Nicola, I can't even explain it. As soon as we landed, I was like, I'm Paris Hilton.
Where's the red carpet?
I was so like ready to just like go big, just everything, like, you know, whatever it was. And I thought to myself, going big at the time meant this, charging $5,000 to work with me for 3 months. That was like, to me, that was where I was at, you know, and $5,000 for 3 months, that felt so good and so expansive. And I put it out there. I messaged everybody on Instagram. I mean, like, I put a story out on Instagram. I told everybody on LinkedIn, which was my main platform at the time. And I emailed my list and I said, new program, $5,000 for 3 months. 10 people signed up to that. And I remember just like being in this house we were living in Orange County, which was another thing because I really wanted to be like in the OC. Yeah. And if you know, you know. Anyway, yeah. And I remember just being upstairs in the bedroom saying to Michael, my husband, who also works in the business with me, oh, I've got another discovery call. I've got another clarity call. I've got another sales call. I've got a discovery call. And it all happened within that, like, this short period of like 4 days. Like, everybody was just booking in. And by the end of it, we were just both staring at each other, just going, what just happened? Yeah, I don't know, take what you will from that story, but it was like a lot of money stuff that I moved, understanding energetics once again, and then just putting it out there and actually taking action on grounding that energy to a sales offer.
Yeah. And what comes up for me here is like, it doesn't always need to make sense. We don't always need to follow a process. We don't need to think, oh, we should be doing this. It's like, you had this desire, you went somewhere that you believed would be expansive for you, you lent into that and went in with the confidence that the offers that you were then going to share and the message that you were then telling, that hit home because it was authentic and it was exciting and it had your full energy behind it. And look what happened. And it's also, I guess, what's coming up is people, you know, when we do notice a fear or a resistance or something that feels off kilter or misaligned, actually to be curious about it and say, okay, who could I turn to that's going to support me with that? Or who could I speak to that might be able to guide me through this period, versus ignoring it, versus, you know, just, kind of carrying on. It was like being curious, doing that inner work, and then taking action based on when you felt good and what felt really aligned.
Yes. And I love the way you summarize that. And one thing I will quickly say is the inner work doesn't always feel as though you've done the inner work, because for that period of time that I was really working on a lot of my like story and things like that. And if you've ever worked with, let's say, a more traditional therapist, or even if it's someone spiritual, you kind of sometimes walk out of those sessions and you go, did anything actually happen? Or, you know, it's not like I'm free of all of these beliefs, but it happened. I noticed it, you know, months and months later when I was going, you know what, I'm just going to put this offer out there. And by the way, there was no sales page. It was just like words on the Instagram story, and it just all came through. And at that point I went, oh my goodness, I think that was the inner work that's now showed up in this way, not some fancy strategy.
Once again, something else that we're not taught when we're younger or when we work, you know, in corporate. It's like, it's a journey, it's a process. And one of the things that we've spoken about over the time that we've been working together is the long game, and remembering that it's a long-term thing that we're in. You know, this is the business that I want to be having for the rest of my life. And it can be easy to get caught up in like looking for those quick wins or finding those quick solutions. But when the trust is there and the passion and the commitment and the ambition is there, it's a knowing that it will work out. It's just trusting that the time will happen as and when it should, but taking the intentional action, following what feels good, following the energetics and the intuition, and then having fun with it along the way as well.
Yeah. And I think if we were to kind of pick out, it's sort of weird even saying it this way, but if we were to pick out a trend that's happening with selling and what's going on in the coaching or wider than that online entrepreneurial space is we're just becoming a lot more attuned to what smells fishy and what feels authentic. We're getting way better at knowing what that is as a society, as online consumers. Like, 5 years ago, we wouldn't have really known what a scam clothing brand was. But now when you see it and you go, that feels scammy, there's something wrong here. And then you Google it and you realize like all these people are like, ask for a refund. It didn't, whatever it was. The same goes with personal brands. So if there's one piece of advice that I want to share with all of you is there is like something that's happened in my own journey that I now reflect on and I go, wow, I think that's really been a big reason why there's been so much easy, flowy business happening in my world. And that's because I've never actually said like, I'm an expert at this, so come and follow me. Or it's like, I have this 7 steps fail-proof framework that will get you from 0 to 10K months. And, really trying to back it with heavy guarantees and money backs and those sorts of things just felt like very 10 years ago. So if you've been noticing who you're leaning into, and this whole discussion is really about energy, what I feel a lot of the audience are looking from you right now and anyone who's listening is like authenticity, but deeper than that, it's just like this really deep level of being modest and humble about your journey. But it's so, but that's not to say don't talk about your successes. It's just to say, like, I would frame it in a way of saying, guys, like I've made X amount of dollars this month and I'm so humbled by that. And it's not forcing those words out either. It really comes from within rather than I've made 50K this month. So, clearly you need me in your corner as a coach and I'm going to show you how to do that. It's such a subtle line between that. But when we talk about energetics of selling and really building trust with your audience, that's something that I feel is becoming so much more and more and more important, especially in these next few years as like people's bullshit radar just goes like, wheel, like so much faster.
Yeah. Yeah. And there will be certain people that gravitate towards that kind of marketing.
Yes.
But, I think you and I are the same in the sense of it's the story that you relate to. It's the journey and the experience that stands out to be like, oh, I can see my elements of myself in that, or, oh, that's super interesting. And that inspires me to do something similar because of the journey that you're sharing. So yeah.
Yeah. And what is also like incredibly inspiring, and imagine this because it will happen, is someone's going to listen to this episode and go, oh my God, like Nicola was talking about getting to 50K months. And that was her journey back then. And, by the time they're listening to it, you're doing like $1 million. It's just that you're effectively documenting this journey of this is what I'm working through. And I know I'm like working through this very openly, and I'm not claiming to be, having worked everything out. But if you want to be a part of this journey with me, then I'm your gal, and people will see that in you.
Exactly. It's the different elements of the journey as well. It's like, yes, you can, I can get to 10K, 15K, 20K by hustling, by working hard, but I've now found a way of running my business that allows me to do the things that I love, such as travel, spend more time on my health and well-being and lean back more whilst also generating that same revenue. And that's when I'm like, okay, if that's what you're looking for, then I can help you do that versus I'm going to show you those steps, those processes, work, then you're going to get it. So as you say, it's evolving and transitioning as you do as an individual based on where your values lie and the importance and boundaries that you put on your own energy and protecting that along the way as well.
Agree. Absolutely.
Amazing. Well, we're going to wrap it up here because we've shared so much already and there's just so many. Oh, I'm going to have to re-listen and I feel like pause, take notes, reshare. Thank you so much for coming on. I mean, I'm sure most people will be familiar with you, but please let everyone know where they can find you and anything else that you would like to share at the moment.
Oh, that's so fantastic. Thank you so much again for having me here. This is like how our chats go, by the way, guys. Like it's so amazing and expansive when Nicola and I just get chatting. So seeing as you're already here listening to the podcast, you can find my podcast. It is called Rituals. It's spelt uniquely, RICHUALS, and or head over to Instagram. Just find me. I'm Ruby Lee. I document my whole day. So I'd love to meet you. And once again, thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, everyone. And I will catch you in the next episode. Bye.